Okay, it is 10 o'clock on the 22nd of September 2025, and we're assembled here for the Police, Fire and Crime panel for Staffordshire. So I welcome you here. We have quite a important agenda ahead of us. So we'll try and get through this as quickly as possible. If I can go to then item 1 on our agenda, apologies.
Sorry, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillors Krupski, Heesam, Merrick and Khan.
Thank you, and I'm aware that we've got apologies from Councillor Heesam. Did you say Heesam?
Yes, Heesam.
Yes, sorry. And Councillor Williams is on his way. He's running late, but will be joining us. Declarations of interest. Any declarations to declare, members? Quite happy if something comes to mind that you raise it during the meeting. Suddenly things can develop and you think, oh, I do have an interest here to declare. So don't hesitate, indicate, and that can be noted. Minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of July 2025. Can we see that as a accurate record of the meeting? If somebody could move that, I'd be happy. Thank you, Councillor Screen. And seconded by Councillor Atkins. So I'm happy to sign that. Thank you very much. So we're moving now to the item 4, questions to the PFCC from members of the public.
Excuse me, Chairman, just a question, if you don't mind. Where will we deal with the actions as a result of questions raised last time?
They are attached to the minutes.
Yep.
So if there are any actions from that, members could obviously pick that. Is there something on there that you would like to raise?
I'd just like to cover off the 3 of the points that were raised last week, if I may. Last time. Firstly, I was asked a question about the Microsoft renewal contract, which took place several months before the meeting. That was... and I wasn't able to answer in detail at the time. That was to update licences, etc., across the whole organisation. Anybody in business or the public sector at the moment will realise just how important Microsoft are as a supplier, and understand that the nature of their licensing changes all the time. Now, that did result in a pressure, so extra cost for the organisation. But renegotiating meant that those costs were minimised, and at the same time we looked at the number of licences we need of every type to make that a practical agreement going forward. I think there's a bit more detail there in the action note. Do the action notes get published as well, Chair? Yeah, good. They're on the website for those that need to. It's essentially cloud services, various new things. I've been asked to represent the Police and Crime Commissioners on one of the national boards where the negotiations with Microsoft take place across the UK as well, and there's some opportunities for forces in doing things as one entity rather than 43 forces with Microsoft and other big suppliers as well. So I'm hoping we will see some financial as well as productivity and performance benefits from those arrangements too. So I hope that covers that one off. I was asked a question about the heating at Burzon Police Station. My understanding is They've identified a problem with 5 valves, which are going to be replaced next month, which should address the issue. My only question there, and actually I've taken that right through the governance to understand the nature of the problem. My only request there is if any member or hears of that type of issue and those with concerns have used the normal reporting mechanism to raise it, please don't wait till the panel to raise it, because it's just a business as usual thing for me, and I'd quite like to address those things if necessary. It's a complicated heating system because some of the hot water uses the same pipes as the radiators, which is a bit unusual, but there is something that can be done to assist. And more importantly, I think the stab vest question, which Councillor Screen raised, it's been policy in Staffordshire for some time that each officer, PCSO and Special Constable, has their own personally fitted stab vest. And it's very rare, let's say a vest has to go back for repair, something of that nature, that they might be asked or assigned a pooled vest for a period. But it is not by any means normal for people to be sharing vests or even acceptable or policy. Now, I thank Councillor Screen, Chair, for just giving us a little bit more information about where that concern was raised. I believe it was raised related to Tamworth. The Tamworth Commander is very keen, if possible, to understand the detail, because as far as he's concerned, that is not the operating policy at Tamworth or anywhere else in Staffordshire Police. So I hope that offers some encouragement. I was aware of some national stories around stab vests, but I'm pleased to say that that is not a concern or issue in Staffordshire. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the updates there. I think, in particular, I think that is welcome to hear those responses. So that will be certainly noted. I'll give Councillor Screen. Are you happy with those responses, being you raised?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. So if we can move on then to our next item then is the questions from members of the public. Mandy, congratulations.
Thank you, Chair. We've had a number of questions from members of the public for the Commissioner. There are 2 questions from Mrs Mallinder which relate to dealings with a company called Elbit. Those questions and the Commissioner's response were received in time for publication with this agenda, so they're available on the website with the agenda pack. Since publication of the agenda, we've had 4 other questions. We've had 2 from Mr Bradbury, and I have spoken to Mr Bradbury, and he's okay with me reading the questions out, and then the Commissioner can respond. And then we've also had 2 questions from Brockton Parish Council, the chairman of which is here today, who wants to respond to ask his questions in person. So Mr Bradbury's questions were: why are Staffordshire Police Force spending large amounts of money blocking, refusing free speech? And his second question was: why did the Commissioner take so long removing the Chief Constable? If the Commissioner would like to respond to those 2.
Commissioner, would you like to respond?
Excuse me. Yes, thank you, Chair. These questions, I think, as Mandy suggested, they came in 3 or 4 days ago, which slightly limits my opportunity to form a response. But in respect to the first one, I'm very interested to know what money Mr Bradbury is referring to, and indeed where he believes free speech is being blocked or refused. If Mr Bradbury's here and might be in a position to offer a bit more context, I'll do my best to field some of that today and perhaps provide a more detailed response as well. And similarly with the second question, I'm not sure of the context here in terms of how long. Is he referring to my decision not to suspend for some months, or is he referring to some period prior to that during the Chief Constable's appointment? So I'd appreciate a bit more detail, and then I'll try my best to respond a bit more thoroughly.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr Bradbury has come forward, so he will raise his supplementary or clarification as required. Mr Bradbury, welcome, and please.
Yeah. Mr Commissioner, you knew in September last year when they had the open day at the police headquarters that Chris Noble wasn't necessarily performing his duties in a professional manner, didn't you?
I'm not entirely sure what you're referring to.
The open day.
I remember the open day, yes, I remember the date.
Last September.
Yeah.
I spoke to Chris Noble for 2 minutes, just about. He couldn't get away from me quick enough once he realised who I was. And then a few weeks later, a question was put forward.
Mr Bradbury, I understand that you want to say on it.
It needs clarity.
Well, I think we need to know what your supplementary question is for...
The thing is, it needs clarity, and it goes back a while. It goes back a long time.
But can you refer to your supplementary question, please?
Yeah. Well, you knew in September last year that Chris Noble wasn't performing his duties, and then afterwards he had a 2-year extension, and then a bit later he's been removed. I don't understand the logic.
Mr Bradbury, I think there are, for me, there are 2 issues here, and if the Commissioner is willing to just clarify those 2 instances.
Yes.
Mr Bradbury, apologies. It appears like you're addressing the second question around removing the Chief Constable. At the time of the open day, I was actually very confident in what Chris Noble was doing, the way he was performing, the way the service was progressing, all demonstrable in improved responses from the public, but also from HMI. So it was a reasonably straightforward decision for me to extend his contract. I was happy to do that. I'm afraid I do not know what you're referring to in terms of me knowing about him not performing his public duties. That's where I need some specificity from you. If you're able to give it today, great. If you're not, then please do give me some detail and I will come back to you formally.
I can give you some detail, and I have got some information, but maybe not with me today. Okay. But a few weeks after the 15th of September, a question was put forward. And the question basically says, 7 weeks ago, I spoke to the Chief Constable. I've heard nothing since.
Mr Bradbury, I think
and it came from the Commissioner's office.
I need to obviously keep this a meeting that it doesn't go into an informal tennis match that is going backwards and forwards.
Yeah, you don't like them, do you?
And what I would do, the Commissioner has obviously clearly said that in terms of clarification, rather than this meeting trying to extrapolate that clarification, could you then correspond with the Commissioner that he could then give you further detail rather than just
the questions were put forward for a public meeting. The questions are put forward in a public meeting.
You've had a
Mrs. Malinder had a similar issue a few years ago when she came to this meeting, and she was talked over and talked down to by the chairman at the time. If I may, I will continue.
No, I don't wish you to continue, because I wish you to, obviously, in terms of the questions have been answered, you have obviously raised a supplementary that will require further looking to understand. So may I suggest that you actually correspond with the Commissioner rather than at this meeting, because this is not the meeting to have that discussion.
Commissioner has had 4 years.
Mr.
to
Bradbury,
do
I'm
things.
going to obviously say thank you very much for your contribution as far. The Commissioner's just indicated to speak, but I will allow him to do that. But I think we need to move on with this meeting.
I will go once I have mentioned one last thing, please. And that's for you people over there.
Chair, Mr. Bradbury, you're not here, I'm afraid, to make a statement. You were here to, I had a courtesy to raise a supplementary question.
I received a letter.
I'm not going to wish
from
to
the
argue.
Commissioner
Mr. Bradbury, please.
stating that it wasn't the Commissioner's.
Mr. Bradbury, can I halt you there, please? And I will go to the Commissioner, and then I will move on with the meeting.
Chairman, it appears clear to me Mr. Bradbury believes I know something from a period prior, and I'm assuming it relates to both of his questions. Sir, if you wouldn't mind, I will look through our records under your name. If you've sent anything into the office that you're referring to, could I ask you to send it again as well? And I absolutely commit, I'll come back to you in detail. Clearly you're on... I'm sorry? As long as it is done in a public environment, Chairman, with your permission, I'm comfortable to come back and respond in this meeting again, because at that point I think we'll have the context for the questions. So if you're in agreement, I'm happy to try to do that.
Do not remember sending a letter, because I put forward a question regarding Chris Noble, and you said in that letter will come from your office. Because this letter is addressed...
Mr. Bradbury,
I am going to sit back and let the Chief Constable take it, because it was addressed to all...
Okay. Well, that might be due process, but it won't stop me coming back to you with my own view on that subsequently. Happy to do that. Thank you.
thank you, Commissioner. Thank-
There have been two other questions from Brockton Parish Council, and I believe the chairman of Brockton Parish Council is here today to ask those questions. It's Councillor Bates.
Welcome, Councillor, and you're happy to raise a supplementary question to the responses that...
He hasn't had the responses yet.
oh, sorry, my apologies. Yes, sorry. If you'd like to give your questions to the Commissioner, and we will then hear his responses. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The first one regards reporting of accidents at Brockton Crossroads. At a meeting with Staffordshire County Council highway officers on the 15th of July, it was brought to the attention of the Parish Council that the police only log incidents where there has been personal injury claim. Is this correct? If yes, please explain why is this the case? The number of accidents and incidents at the crossroads is of significant concern to the residents of Brockton, and this method of recording by police is correct, then the true picture of the number of accidents and incidents will never be known by the police, which is completely unacceptable. The Parish Council submitted a petition to the County Council in 2024, signed by over 400 individuals, calling for safety improvements at the crossroads. We have the support of our County Councillor, and we're shocked to hear that this method of recording accidents by the police and want to formally request that this is changed so that all accidents, however minor, are logged. Can this be agreed? That's my first question, Chairman.
Let's do them one at a time. So if Commissioner would like to respond.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Bennett, was it? Bates, excuse me. Is this the crossroads at Cannock Road?
Where Sawpit Lane joins the A34 and the Tesley Road is opposite on the main A34.
Okay, that's the one I'm familiar with, and I understand the concerns of residents myself as it happens. I will be providing, Chair, a more detailed response to this because I need just to understand a little more about the formal policy that the Council is suggesting might not be correct. However, this is not a completely unfamiliar issue to me. There's a reporting obligation on the service, as I understand it, that where there's been injury or harm, that the accidents are recorded. Not all accidents are reported to the police. That's the fundamental challenge here. Quite often incidents happen and the two parties involved are not interested in calling the police, and they haven't called an ambulance, and they have no need for any other record. In fact, they don't even contact their insurer. I am reassured by the police that where insurance claims are made, they quite often revert to the police, and that might mean that they become aware of an incident that was otherwise not reported by the people involved. What I think I'm comfortable with at the moment is that incidents that are reported are recorded. Incidents that result in some sort of injury or harm are flagged, and they are reported to a national body. Now, in recent years, we've had one or two issues with the accuracy and time it takes to record those and report nationally. And that's something that's gone through the Staffordshire Safer Roads Partnership, which Dave and I co-chair now. And that information is more up to date. What I think we might be getting to here, sir, is that you believe the number in the sort of public domain of accidents is understated. And that is not uncommon to me. I have a few similar situations around the county where people believe the numbers that are recorded by the police don't reflect the volume and therefore the level of concern of the community when they're in discussion with their county highways officers. So I will endeavour, just if I can, to accurately describe to you in writing what is recorded, but it is beyond my control and the police's control to record anything that's not reported to them.
Thank you, Chairman. I do know of one instance where there was an accident because it involved my son, that's how I know. He rang the police and they said, anybody injured? No. Can the traffic get past? Yes. Sort it out yourself. And that was it. Okay. You know, so again, it doesn't get logged in the system.
Okay. Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. And that's a nice example. If there's nothing to report to the police in that situation, there's a question as to how they're logging that. No doubt if there was an insurance claim, it would have come through and been reported in another form. So I entirely get where you're coming from. And I think it'd be in everybody's interest if we just clarified what is and isn't recorded and why.
Thank you.
Okay. Your second question?
Yes. This is to do with injuries to the deer on the chase. It is our understanding that the way to report deer injuries and fatalities is via 101. Is this correct? That's the first thing. If yes, then those taking the calls need to be informed about the correct process to follow, as it has been raised with us that the system is not working effectively and people are confused. A clear process needs to be communicated to all those involved in supporting on this matter. This needs to be shared with the parish councils so that we can disseminate the information throughout the parish so that residents are very clear of the correct process to follow. the Ranger Service also needs to be advised of the correct process to follow. This will clear up the current confusion that exists and ensures that the distressed deer are attended to as quickly as possible. Now, this was raised because early one Sunday morning, I say early, just before 8, a neighbour rang me, said, "There's a deer, what do I do?" Ring 101, and a bit later in the morning he came round, excuse me, he came round and said, "I rang 101 and said, it's a county council rangers problem, not ours, ring this number." And the number they gave him must have been the visitor centre at, up on the Chase, because he didn't get a reply until after 9 o'clock. And then they said, "It's not our department, but we will pass it on for you." In the meantime, there's a deer lying in the road.
Commissioner?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. We will be responding quite quickly, actually, in a bit more detail. And I do understand the problem. I drive that way back myself. I've seen a few incidents with deers, and it's quite distressing. The correct number to call is 101. If there are, I'm not entirely comfortable with the advice in that one, given the chart of activity I've been told is followed. There's an arrangement with deer wardens who are employed by the county council. These are people who are trained and accredited, if necessary, to attend to the animal. Sometimes, regrettably, that leads to dispatching the animal for its in its own interests and in the interest of safety. So getting to the right person, I think, is important. We'll make sure that we communicate that back, or I'll make sure the service communicate that back to you. The only caveat to the 101 is if the deer is in the road causing a traffic hazard, then I think it's entirely legitimate, and I'm told it is, to call 999, because that poses a wider threat. So I agree with you. This feels to me like a process that's been in place for actually a number of years, and as far as I'm aware, it works effectively. There might be some drift in communication, not least with people in the employ of the council as well. So we'll try and resolve that for you, sir, if that's possible. You'll have something back from us within a few days on that one. Councillor, I wonder if I might just ask, this is the sort of stuff that more than occasionally crosses my desk. I'm very happy to deal with these issues as and when they arise. I have hundreds of communications a year with parish councils. Perfectly happy to bring them to this forum, but you'll know that we don't meet here all that often. A concern like this, I'm very happy Dave and I will come out to the parish council, have a chat with you, or just respond to an email. Just send it to PFCC at my address, and we'll resolve these types of issues anyway. But thank you for bringing it to my attention.
Right, thank you, Chairman. In the past, many years ago, we used to have the number for the Ranger Service. They'd come out, dispatch the deer if necessary, or remove the body. Yeah. There was another instance where the deer had got tangled up in the football net in our playing field, and the PCSO spent half the morning there trying to contact the Ranger Service. So it's a breakdown as much, or probably more, with the Ranger Service than with the police. And, you know, it's unfortunate that there's a deer possibly struggling around on the side of the road. And it upsets the public as much as it upsets everybody else.
Thank you. Sorry, Chairman, I agree. It's distressing, this stuff. If there's a communication breakdown or a delay, then we'll do our utmost. It might not be necessarily the police's responsibility, but we'll do our utmost. It's something I'm quite keen to look at.
Okay. Are you... any supplementary question, or is you...
No, thank you very much,
beyond
Chairman.
that? Thank you very much
Thank
for
you,
your
Commissioner.
questions. Thank you. And Commissioner, thank you for the responses.
Sorry, Chairman. Yes, I would just like to. I know we've got an item on the agenda later about reviewing the panel. I continue to be a little bit concerned about questions. I think it's really valuable that the public have an opportunity to put questions to me. Mrs Mallender has raised a couple of questions in very good time and received written responses to them. Anybody watching on the webcast has no idea about the detail of those questions or indeed my answers. And I think there's a public interest, actually probably more so in these two, which relate to a strategic matter and where responsibility lies for policing response to protest. Perhaps more so than certainly other matters which I can deal with in between, although it's understandable Mr Bradbury feels that route hasn't worked for him. So I wonder whether you and colleagues might give real consideration to how we handle the questions, because I think the public are right probably to feel if they get a question in some weeks in advance, it gets the same level of response as one that comes in at short notice.
I take your point there, and in terms of the review, obviously we've got that coming up. I think one of the, to give time, is that we may be looking at, if the panel agree within the review, that actually there's more time in terms of 15 days to submit it before the meeting, to give us ample time to prepare and put that through, that it becomes public information. So that we'll discuss that under item 8 of the review, and taking those points on board. Mr Bradbury, I've recognised you acknowledged, but we've moved on a bit there, but we will have that review going forward at item 8, if that's okay. So I think it is important, though, obviously what the Commissioner is saying in terms of that openness and transparency in receiving those responses to the questioner. So I think we will consider that.
Just to clarify as well, the questions and the written responses that you'll send me after the meeting will both be published on the agenda as a supplementary agenda to the pack.
Okay, so moving on then to item 5, sorry, decisions. Mandy?
Just one decision has been made from the, or published on the Commissioner's website since the last meeting, and that relates to domestic abuse victim and domestic abuse predator contracts. The link is on the agenda for that the public and the panel have received.
Anything to be raised from that response? Members, should we happy to move on? Okay, so moving on to item 6 of the agenda, the police plan update. Commissioner, would you like to introduce?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. And with your permission, what I'd like to do here is just address some of the highlights. This is a really comprehensive document. I'd like to thank my team, particularly Ralph, for putting it together, because it's a really good and comprehensive update for people. So I'm just going to concentrate on what's new and then focus a little more than I normally would on that sort of crime element of my role, which is about victims, offenders, and the work we do with partners. So just briefly, working through on page 25 there, an outstanding local police service. That's a fundamental headline in my plan. All about getting closer to communities, understanding what matters to them, and proactive in solving their concerns. And we'll see some connections later. I think there's a shared ambition here with the government with their neighbourhood policing guarantee. Local priorities and local teams are now visible to anybody on the police.uk website. You can go there, see who your local team of officers and PCSOs are, and the service's interpretation at the moment of their local priorities for the police and partners to deal with. I feel there's a bit more evolution to happen there. It doesn't, on my things I brought to my attention by local stakeholders and not necessarily fully represented in those local priorities. So I'm hoping that will develop further, because that's what we need to deal with. Outstanding local police service. So the policing plan, this is the formal document produced by the Chief Constable and the service, which takes due regard of the police and crime plan we're seeing the update on today on page 26. So they're looking to ensure a safe and confident community, develop exceptional workforce, develop active and productive partnerships, and build an outstanding organisation. So real crossover and overlap with my plan, which I'm delighted with, although going into the detail, and quite often into the detail of where risk is, which of course is a fundamental for police, but also for fire and rescue, as we'll see later. Just a reminder, Chair, members are very welcome, as are the public, to observe our public performance meetings. I go into real detail there and share a quite comprehensive pack ahead of those online with the Chief Constable. The next one's on the 20th of November. Panel members are very welcome to come along to that, and no doubt some of the detail in the pack will inform their questions subsequently. Some good news, the Police Uplift programme, that's the previous government's uplift, considerably enhanced the numbers of officers in Staffordshire. A further increase will come from the neighbourhood policing guarantee of around about 53 officers this year. I'm still, with others, seeking to influence ministers to allow for local discretion on the mix of future growth. I'm very keen it's officers for us. We have a good number of PCSOs at the moment, which I'd like to maintain, and a good number, well, actually we'd like to build more into our special cohort, and there's a big recruitment programme out to do that. But I think the national focus should not be on dictating how that mix of officers, PCSOs and specials, as per the manifesto. It should be more about local need and requirement. I particularly say that because when we have a changing world, particularly with the need to police protests, the flexibility of officers is really important. They don't necessarily have to be restrained by shifts. We can't put specials or PCSOs into some of those lines of where the police are keeping parties with different views apart or protecting the interests of people in Staffordshire. So we'll keep going with that. The surveys there, referenced on page 27, there's a number of surveys. This one is actually of victims itself, conducted by the County Council, which I thank them for, is showing some real progress over the last 2 or 3 years, which I'm very pleased with. The experience of victims is probably my primary concern. There are a lot of people who have views about policing, and thank goodness they don't actually need to call the service for help. Quite often those views are informed by other means, national news stories, and even the dissemination of misinformation. But victims have a very real experience, so I'm pleased with that progress. We also carry out a public survey every 6 months, been doing that for 2.5 years now. And there's some value in that, the headlines on page 28, particularly because we can compare it with most similar forces. There's about 7 or 8 have a similar survey. We've tended to outperform them in the last 2 years as the service has improved. It's levelling off now. Actually, my bigger concern at the moment is a survey that's not referenced in this paper, and that's the Crime Survey of England and Wales. Now that survey, and this is on in the public domain, suggests that in Staffordshire, people's sense that the police are doing a good job is pretty much bottom of the list, and people's perception they're dealing with local priorities is also pretty much bottom of the list. Now, I know performance-wise that is not the case. I know the service is performing well, and the articulation of dealing with local priorities with partners, because it is not all a police matter, ASB, road offences, issues with of other concerns to the community are not necessarily the police duty. They are part and parcel of a partnership response. So we have a disconnect in Staffordshire. And Chair, for me, this next 12 months, that is absolutely my priority. I cannot bear the idea of people not going to the park, not going to the pub, not going to do whatever they want to do for fear of something they should not be fearful of. So getting the right information out, and I will be asking partners to step up to share accurate information about crime, antisocial behaviour in Staffordshire, because otherwise people's lives are affected and we don't attract the investment that we should. Very pleased to reference there on page 28 our approach to the national programmes through the summer. £1 million again for hotspot policing. That's a more discreet but more hotspots around the county. We're seeing some really good results from that. Evidence-led areas. In some cases, we're seeing an uptick in recorded crime and ASB. And that is as a direct result of the increased patrolling and visibility and proactive interventions of officers and PCSOs in those areas. And we're getting good responses from local councils about the feeling in those hotspot areas as well. Neighbourhood Policing Guarantee I've already referred to. 53 officers, 15 specials by March 26, and we're on track to bring those in. To give you a sense there, that's about 2 officers per shift. So it isn't quite to the degree of the over 300 or so of the previous uplift, but this is good news and they will be dedicated to neighbourhood policing. Just a reminder there, Chair, we have that, as I mentioned earlier, the full Peel inspection by His Majesty's Inspectors next spring. There's a lot of work going on within the service to be ready for that. In the meantime, we're expecting a report on our child protection inspection in the next few weeks. Change, 4.11, very keen just to highlight that. This has been a conversation that my team and I have been having with the service for a number of years around a really professional approach to managing change. There is so much opportunity, particularly around technology at the moment. It's a different skill set to deliver that in partnership with the operational leads. I'm really pleased we've got an excellent new experienced person in to assist the service with that, and I'm going to watch it with interest. Similarly, estate strategy. Very pleased this week, last week rather, I was up at Longton to see the early completion of the big refurbishment of that station. There's more to happen there, but it's already created a lot more space. And as I understand it, teams want to go and locate themselves now at Longton, which is good for the community. But it's also good for them because it's a spot-on type of environment to work in. Not much to report on the combined police and fire stations, except that they are working very well. And I'll now move to selling the old Utoxeter site. We'll probably go to auction to try and achieve good value, or to achieve good value for that location. Police and fire now co-located at Utoxeter. Anybody who's been anywhere near headquarters, and I'm hoping, Chair, you and a number of colleagues will join us with new councillors and other councillors from across the county and city to an introduction day next month, I think, and you'll see that the site is already being prepared for the training facility. It's a hell of a project, that is. They're managing it extremely well, actually, with very little disruption to the site at the moment, which I'm pleased to see. Just some references there to technology. One I want to pick out is Salesforce. That's already assisting the service in getting on for a fifth of callers around certain crime types to sort of keep themselves updated online with how their case is going. Important note there, we're keeping an eye on this. The tech's great. At the back end, We do need to make sure officer contact details are up to date and officers respond promptly to contact alerts. Of course we do. So this is about not just technology on its own, but process and expectation of the people to those opportunities if they achieve full value. Page 31. Now this is just starting to detail what I'm doing around, or my team are doing around support for victims. Those services there, the Gateway, Dave and I visited the Gateway recently, got in a good efficient space in Stoke-on-Trent the other day. 17,800 referrals. That is almost every victim of crime receiving some sort of advice, guidance and information. Some of them will take on signposting to other commission services or those that we know about outside our own commission mix. And really pleased to say, unlike 3 or 4 years ago when I arrived, almost all of the information needed to contact those victims is transferred from the police within 48 hours. But you'll see there's stuff here that perhaps members aren't aware of. We do a business crime support service. We've got a sexual assault referral centre. That's typically around where people have been assaulted or raped. We support that for adults and children and young people. We've got a sexual assault and abuse service called Survive, and also the hate crime service. These are really important for for individuals experiencing specific harm or concern. And one I'm very pleased to see is going from strength to strength is the ASB Harmony service, which works with councils and others to deal with issues of antisocial behaviour. Regrettably, quite often involved with neighbours and others who aren't communicating and should. And they do their best to get them talking in a positive way. Our biggest investment is in domestic abuse support. That is where considerably more harm, real risk and violence is than any other area of criminality. And the New Era service, it's around £3.3 million, and there's a very significant contribution from both top-tier councils, Staffordshire County Council and Stoke-on-Trent City Council, and I thank them both for supporting the extension of that earlier this year. So we've got an extension now until September 2027. It's still looked on around the country as one of the best ways of getting a consistent level of support to victims of domestic abuse across a very large area, which is not straightforward. Moving on, Chair, if I may, page 33 there, preventing and protecting. This is primarily about how we work with others to reduce reoffending. Significantly this year, particularly with probation, probation is under quite a lot of, let's say, expectation. There's additional funding gone in from government. There's additional asks gone in from government. They are absolutely in the front line because of some of the policies, including earlier release of offenders, and as a result of the sentencing review, fewer short-term prison sentences, which I'm very comfortable with. In my opinion, they don't necessarily have the impact that they should on reducing reoffending. But it does mean the pressure is on to get the right treatment and interventions in place with those people that otherwise might go to prison. So probation, a good partnership there, but becoming more important going forward. And again, for members, you may not be aware, mental health community triage, that works very well in terms of the right health partner support in at the sharp end to make sure that the police are able to respond with health when somebody's got a mental health concern. We're upping our drug testing on arrest programme. This is very important, not just for understanding how many offences, particularly on the roads, are to do with drugs, but also to possibly divert people, get them on the right training, and also the right support, again with a view to reducing reoffending. Out-of-court resolutions, these are similarly schemes for, if possible, keeping people out of being prosecuted in the first place in some cases, especially young people. They might be carrying drugs, they need some proper advice, and they need a wake-up. And some of these programs do exactly that. We're doing more and more of those, which I think is very positive for the future. We provide a housing support service for people coming out of prison, also employment support packs. There's a women's offending task and finish group, and our PFCC education service, 2 excellent people in that team working with all the schools to try and ensure that they've got all the support they need and content to deliver some very important messages to young people, detailed on page 35. And that includes knife crime, pornography, water safety. Vaping's interesting. When Dave and I visited the young people at college recently, that was the first thing they expressed concern about. Vaping, feeling under pressure from others, knowing some of it was using what is now criminal single-use vapes and things of that nature. The Child Criminal Exploitation Service, delivered by Catch 22, 79 referrals in just Q1. Again, an important service. These are individuals who are being, young people quite often coerced by county lines and others to sell drugs or under pressure to perform criminal acts. The Sexual Exploitation Service is now back with the city and county. We led the commissioning of that for some years. That doesn't mean we're not still engaged. We absolutely are, and we're very much involved with them. Very important piece of work there. And then just under that section, to wrap that bit up, Chair, the space programme. I went to a couple of events again this year. Space is ace, in my opinion, and this year was better than ever. The evaluation will be out very shortly, and I'll share that with you at a future panel. It's not just reducing ASB, it's all about giving young people and their families quite often an opportunity to do something they might not have otherwise done during the summer holiday with proceeds of crime funding. So it's a good way to see that going back into the community. Now, similarly, colleagues, I've not talked as much as I should about our partnership efforts, and in the plan now it's about impactful partnerships. Yes, we get on. Yes, there's proper shared understandings, but we have to have impact from these areas of investment. The Violence Reduction Alliance is very much been doing that. We've enhanced the Navigator programme this year. This is individuals in accident and emergency and custody areas, talking to people who are subject to violence, quite often getting that key piece of information about how that came about when people are prepared to talk before they get coerced or feel they're at risk from others. So that's a programme that we've expanded. We're working with the mental health trusts in prisons. We're working very hard at the moment to try and get everybody gathered around what we're calling a vulnerability dashboard. This again is using technology to identify where services should be, not just in terms of police records, but council records, antisocial behaviour, health, vulnerability, all in one place. There's quite a lot of money gets spent on strategic needs assessments, pulling reports together about areas. It is possible, I believe, to put this in one place and it become available to each organisation. There's usual challenges around information sharing, which I'm determined to get to the bottom of because this is in the public interest. Weapon prevention and diversion schemes, the drug and alcohol partnership, which I chair. Good progress there, particularly on breaking the supply chains. This is top of page 38. This is really dealing with those organised criminals that are dealing drugs. treatment and recovery, real credit to the county and city council. There's more money, quite a lot more money gone into there from government, and they are expanding their treatment services for addiction, but also stepping more widely into other areas of health. I do hope government recognises the value of that programme. It was, I think, 3 years into a 10-year programme. It is so important that people receive the support, if possible, to manage their addiction. But there's an awful lot of crime related to drug and alcohol addiction, as we know, so there's a double whammy from that. Where the challenge is this generational shift, getting into educational, getting people to understand that the risks around taking drugs. And I fear, and I've asked for a bit more work to be done, there's an issue with cocaine, not just in Staffordshire, but around the country. I don't think some people quite appreciate the pernicious trade that they are supporting. I don't like to use the word middle class, but there's almost a class thing around cocaine, as it's a leisure, it's a lifestyle thing. It's a drug that can completely and utterly destroy your life. And I've spoken to some families recently where that's happened. It's not attractive. It's not in any way... well, I'll come back to that, Chair. It's something I feel quite strongly about. We talk about... I'll come back to it. So, alcohol is also in there because it's a problem in Staffordshire, I regret to say, with some of the highest levels of accident, emergency and hospital engagement because of addiction. Chair, you just want a rest from me, I'm sure. I'll pick up again just to wrap up. But Dave, how are we getting on with road safety and some of those children's issues? And then I'll come back on criminal justice.
Thank you. So the Road Safety Partnership, partnership between the police, the fire service, both top-tier local authorities and ourselves, currently developing a new strategy. I think that's quite important so that all partners can be held to account. Police for their response, councils for the way in which they spend their local transport monies, to make sure that we are where we can building out some of the issues in terms of highway design, some of the challenges, also some of the challenges around data. Actually, just on the back of Mr. Bates's question earlier, actually, so Councillor Bates's question, where we have issues where, I was giving you an example, I was in Alliston very recently, they have challenges there with speeding, particularly early in the mornings and late at night, compared with shift patterns. The police would say that we've only had so many reports of issues, but the County Council will tell me they've had to rebuild the bridge 3 or 4 times, and actually where does that data feed in? Because clearly there's a challenge there for having to rebuild the bridge and highway safety scheme. So that strategy is in development now, and hopefully we'll be coming to the next board meeting. We've just launched the pilot scheme around fitness to drive for older drivers, again making sure that where we are having issues with older drivers, that all drivers with specially adapted vehicles or medical conditions, making sure that we are allowing people who are fit to drive to continue to do so for as long as possible, but similarly making sure we keep people as safe as we possibly can. And that's involving occupational therapists and an improved driving instructor to make sure that assessment is done properly, particularly for older people. Just touching on community safety partnerships, and this is quite an important area, I think, for ourselves and for the public, actually more generally. A lot of the issues we would talk about in terms of public perception of safety, do you feel safe in your town centre? Yes, it's important there's a strong policing response to some of those challenges, but equally, councils do have abilities around antisocial behaviour, around designing out crime. Often we do give money to the CSPs, £750,000 across the county to all the boroughs and districts and Stoke City Council to, again, make sure that some of that work is delivering for communities. I think it's really important that we see the needs assessment that we commission being recognised in their plans, but also the local priorities driven by locally elected members, the cabinet members for community safety on the various boroughs and districts, to make sure that some of the real challenges that a lot of people see on the street and the challenges that they see in their local communities are being met with some of that funding, whether that be alley gates, CCTV cameras, I saw some really good work done in Burton recently, where they're combining it with some of their regeneration funding on a particular, I think, is it Anglesey? Yep. Anglesey Passage, where they're looking at getting rid of a bit of a building, putting in CCTV. Really good partnership work actually delivered by the CSP in part with the local council. So yeah, I think that's the CSP stuff.
Thank you. Just with the community safety partnerships, we had a good ASB delivery group meeting last week. I think there is some good work being done with that, £750,000. But the other ask I had of partnerships this year was around this confidence piece. I'm not comfortable at the moment that we're getting our messages out, and this is a message to councils as well as other people in the local CSPs, which includes housing associations and probation as well. I'm not sure we're getting our message out to the public that we're dealing with those local priorities as a partnership. We need to change that, otherwise I might have to do it in a different way rather than through the a share of the local funding. But there's some terrific projects. And then finally, Chair, and I've really been keen to get the highlights of this out. I hope I've done that and can stimulate some questions. Criminal justice. I only have a power to convene. I think it's a valuable one, and I really do appreciate the support from courts, HMI, CTS, probation, and others in our local criminal justice board. But as long as we've got these backlogs in our courts, we have a problem. And in Staffordshire, they're the second worst in the country for magistrates and Crown. It means victims are waiting too long. Support services are holding on for victims sometimes for 2-3 years when it could be months. People are not necessarily seeing that through for understandable reasons. They might cease to support a prosecution process. I've written to David Lammy to say I think we need more in Staffordshire than we've been getting in terms of national support for managing that backlog. And whilst I'm enthusiastic about some of the changes in the courts, I don't really feel we should be taking on pilots and things like that whilst we've got a backlog to deal with. It's too fundamental to seeing justice done. Now, having said that, I would really like to congratulate everybody who's been involved in a piece of work led by our Crown Prosecution Service, I believe, around early guilty pleas. So this is encouraging people, not on the advice of some to try and delay a process for as long as possible, knowing it might be 2 or 3 years before their case comes to court and it might collapse, but to plead guilty if they are. And that has really enhanced the number of people doing exactly that, which means fewer hearings, fewer crack cases, and earlier justice for victims. So more of that is exactly the direction we need to go in, but I'm afraid I can't let up on that anymore. And I do appreciate some of these bodies, they're not in a position as I am to say, come on, to the Ministry of Justice or others. But I am, and I have, and they need to get on with it. So hopefully that gives you a real feel for where we've gone with our progress over the last 6 months. It's a team effort. The service, my duty is to scrutinise, set some high-level agenda and keep their budgets, but those other areas of delivery are fundamentally within the control of my team. Louise does an excellent job overseeing all of that, and I've got terrific team members who are expert in every area. So hopefully that gives you some reassurance about what we're doing to keep people safe, but also to support victims and reduce reoffending.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for a very comprehensive review of the plan there. Councillor Charlotte Atkins.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, Commissioner. One of your key priorities is supporting victims. So I want to ask you about stalking. Freedom of Information requests back in 2023 showed that there were 4,268 stalking reports, but only 3 stalking protection orders were applied for. Now, in November 2024, Staffordshire Police published its stalking action plan. And within that plan, it said that by September this year, the police would consider whether Staffordshire should have dedicated stalking officers or subject matter experts. So where are we with that? And do you agree with the Jane Monckton Smith homicide timeline, which indicates that stalking is a serious risk factor for murder and manslaughter? So if you'd please like to go into that.
Thanks, Councillor Atkins. Just starting with the last bit, yeah, I do absolutely agree that they're an indicator of high risk. And it's a timely question. I'm not going to be able to respond in the level of detail I want to, but if I may, I will share some stuff with you in between the meetings, perhaps bring this back to the next meeting as well, Chair. At the moment, the service is looking at domestic abuse and stalking. Considering the question of specialist officers in the round, my team are currently tasked to put together a support package for victims of stalking and harassment, which I feel has been something, well, it's certainly something the team and I have wanted to do for a couple of years. I think I've identified the resources to do that. The protection orders is also timely because I've asked a question of the Chief Constable around domestic violence protection orders and stalking protection orders, and I would hope to have some stats on that very shortly too. If I can't get them back to you in good time, which I expect to be able to do, it's certainly something we'll cover and have a conversation about with the Chief Constable at the public performance meeting. I can't disagree at all with your sentiment. This is an area of increasing concern. It's an early indicator, and it's somewhere we should be in, I think, as early as possible, in line with perhaps the best performing forces. At the moment, I'm sorry, I can't give you much more detail because it's a bit of a work in progress.
Well, I mean, what concerns me is that the peel inspection for 2023 to 2025 recorded just 1 full stalking prevention order and 4 interim stalking prevention orders. And so that implies to me that there's not been a lot of impact since the publication of the stalking action plan in November 2024 to have such a limited response on stalking. And you mentioned domestic abuse. Only 38% of domestic abuse victims, 38% of domestic abuse victims declined risk assessment. So that implies there's a lack of confidence in the process from domestic abuse victims. So what is being done to build victim trust and confidence in the police? Because if they're not going to go for assessments, it implies that they don't really have confidence that the police are going to actually be able to help them in any real sense. So what's being done to try and ensure that domestic abuse victims feel that the police can give them the support they so dreadfully need?
Councillor, I'd appreciate it, that statistic about victims and declining assessment. Is that something in the report, or is that something from elsewhere?
Something from elsewhere.
Okay, I'd really welcome seeing that information if you don't mind, and I can make some inquiries to understand the nature of that. And in fact, what I'd be very keen to do is understand whether that is indeed something unique to Staffordshire or common around the county.
My information, I can certainly extract that for you. I haven't got it at my fingertips at the moment, but I understand from someone who deals in this area that that actually is very high, that 38% is very high for declining risk assessments. But I will go back and check where that figure comes from. But I can assure you it comes from a very expert source.
As I say, Councillor, this is an area of renewed focus. The service have made considerable progress with domestic abuse in the round, not least with response times, timeliness of investigation. Our own support team are really very, very close to the majority of victims, unlike a lot of other areas, regrettably. I think the detail that you're asking me to respond to today, I'm going to need some time just to understand and respond to you fully. But I absolutely agree with you that this is an area of continuing focus for everyone. It's where the most harm is, absolutely the most harm. And if we have an opportunity to intervene earlier, then we will be. A couple of things that might be of note, Chair. My team brought to my attention some national programmes recently which may be, they may be looking to encourage commissioners and forces to support. One is called Drive, which is a programme to provide people identified as being at high risk of offending in DA or stalking. So perpetrator interventions nationally. Now, we're one of the few areas that already have a scheme for perpetrators of domestic abuse. It's been quite successful, but it is a voluntary scheme. This would be a scheme where people would be required to undertake some training, support, intervention. I agree with that in principle, but the pilot around the country seems to be some confusion around the value for money, the amount of that's involved in quite a bureaucratic approach. Through you and your contacts and colleagues, it would be interesting to establish whether that's entirely the right thing to be asking every force area in the country to do to a particular model. I'm not convinced at the moment, and I understand in Greater Manchester it's actually been rejected in favour of a more traditional approach. Similarly, getting partners around the table. But there is a lot of work being done locally and nationally in these areas, which is quite right. But it has to be effective and not involve the same partner agencies in the duplicated meetings all the time. And this programme's one where I'm a bit concerned it might be.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are you happy with the responses there, and you'll communicate? Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Atkins. Mr. Elliott.
Thanks for the report. Very lots of information in there. Thanks for the hard work and putting that together. I think we touched on this last time, Commissioner, but where would a member of the public find the priorities that they were consulted on? And where would they be able to see through that lens of what they were consulted on, the performance of police and fire? I've been asked that a couple of times as a co-optee, and there's tons of information in here, but I can't kind of pull that out in terms of what those priorities were, the process of putting that together, and what the current performance is. I understand, you know, you mentioned last time that there's lots of other things that you have to be accountable for that perhaps the public wouldn't necessarily say verbally that was a priority for them. But in terms of what they stated to be their priorities or things that they wanted to be focused on for Staffordshire, where would they find it and where would they see the performance through that lens?
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Elliott. The Peace and Crime Plan is on my website. These reports are on my website and webcast here. The public performance pack I mentioned, which goes into real detail about individual areas, is also on that site and covered off at the public performance meetings. I'd welcome your view on how that compares with other places in terms of demonstrating whether we've got the right priorities and whether we're making progress on them. I'm pretty comfortable it compares well. As I mentioned to you last time, and excuse me if I don't quite put this correctly, actually if you went to any 10 members of the public out in the high street today, they're going to have 10 different concerns, and I'd like to feel the service is addressing all of them, because you can't be an effective service or an outstanding if you've got favourites and priorities. And one of the things that makes me slightly nervous in certainly in the recent past, it is almost a sense that some crime types, some concerns are more important than others. For me, the thing that matters to the public is the thing that is bothering them. And in some cases, it's as mundane as I don't know, perhaps an antisocial parking issue. Needs dealing with, because it's the most important thing to them. For others, they are absolutely entrenched in high-risk, high-harm behaviours, maybe they're subject of violence, and at completely the other end of the scale. There are plans that don't reference that. They don't reference children at risk. They don't reference violence. They don't reference high-risk stuff. It's important to cover the lot. So if you're looking, I think you used the word golden thread last time. Perhaps it's a style thing for me. I'm not standing on a soapbox saying this is my golden thread for a plan. I think the world at the moment is too easily persuaded by people assuming to represent the public and offering 2 or 3 bullet point solutions for the future. It ain't that simple. It's complicated. And in this case, I've got a plan that I think accounts for that breadth of concern and risk. And I think, as you've seen today, and you can certainly get in terms of that information that's available, we're not ducking our responsibility to monitor the service's performance or our own performance in delivering against those outcomes. And where we're not doing it, I'm pretty open and determined to address them, whether it's too many people still waiting too long on 101, or too many people still being killed on our roads. Those are genuine concerns of mine, and I'm not shy to express them. So apologies, I'm not quite sure what you're getting at, because this isn't about marketing a plan. It's about delivering a safer Staffordshire.
Sorry, it's going to be me. I'll try and put it a different way. So, as I understand it, you've consulted the public at the beginning, what their priorities were. So, what were their priorities? How have you performed against those priorities? I understand there's tons of good work that's going on, and sometimes that has to flex as well, because things change with events, and I'm sure social media and other actors play a role in people's perception of police and crime and the fire service. But just through very simply what were the priorities, where were they published or are they published, and what is the performance against them. Just through that lens. It's only a small lens. I know tons of other stuff need to be shared, and it's in this report and it'll be on your website. But I may have missed it, but I couldn't find that piece of information so that somebody could say, this is what we said was a priority and this is what you've done about it. Is that clearer?
That's really helpful, Mr. Elliott. Thank you very much. Chair, through you, the panel, of course, hears the report following my consultation in putting the plan together. I think the last published version of that shared here was in November last year. So it may well be on your website. I think it's on mine as well. And that's available to Mr. Elliott and other members in terms of the process and the highlights from that. But also, this is a constant reassessment of those priorities. If you look at page 28, the top there, one of the reasons I do the surveys is to be continually testing those assumptions and where possible get the views of multiple people. Be no surprise, this hasn't changed in 5 years. Antisocial behaviour is still the primary concern, despite it really, really falling over the last 10 years. And drug-related crime continues to be a concern, and quite right too. So all of the efforts around local patrols, children at risk of being criminally exploited, policy around strip and search, practicalities around neighbourhood policing are wrapped up certainly in those two headlines, but particularly in drug-related crime. The measures of whether we're achieving are also reported on more regularly in those surveys. So whether people feel safe at night, whether they believe there'll be a victim, etc. I hope that helps to some degree around the process. What I will do, Chair, if I may, we've got some more detail behind these particular surveys. There's a couple of charts which you might find interesting, Mr. Elliott, around the sort of things that are not the top of their priorities. And some of them are a bit surprising because they'd certainly be towards the top of the police priorities. So it's that balance between expectation and what actually needs to be delivered to keep people safe that is the challenge around these plans, to be frank.
I'll take a look at the report. Yeah, okay.
Councillor Screen.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, thank you for that. I do have a few questions, so whether you want me to go now, I'm happy with that. Just picking up first of all on the guilty plea issue that you mentioned. I believe that guilty pleas come about through the quality of the evidence presented and the amount of that quality of evidence, which does allow solicitors to advise their clients to basically put their hands up to it. It's not a matter of persuasion, it's the quality of the evidence. And I think the police are still lacking in that area. And I think that's one area which they are looking at trying to improve, hopefully. And that will help towards that.
You're quite right, Councillor Screen. So having been assured that the quality of the evidence has improved, and this has been a real focus for the police since the last HMI inspection, not just timeliness of investigation, but quality. And they went back through several thousand cases looking for areas for improvement. It turns out, now this might sound, and apologies if I'm oversimplifying for the partners that have been involved, it seems like quite often that evidence was not presented in a forum that allowed the defence or allowed the alleged perpetrator to understand the weight of evidence, even to the point that a bit of CCTV with somebody clearly looking like the accused was not necessarily shared in a appropriate conversation, it would wait until a court case. So this piece of work they've been doing is to get into some of the practicalities about, well, that looks like you, doesn't it? Are you really going to not plead guilty and waste the court's time? And just that sort of approach outside of the formal court proceedings has led to a considerable number of people voting, putting forward a not guilty plea. I think to the extent of the small sample they did this on, about 90% changed their plea. There was another percentage then that for one reason or the other, and I'm not accusing anybody particularly here, on the advice they were given, were told, let's try and time this out. So, domestic abuse situation. Your partner is unlikely to want to stay with this process for 2 years, and that's how long it takes in Staffordshire sometimes. Let's time it out. Quite often they thought the next stage in the court case might be several months down the line. So also in this environment, if they've said, okay, we're going to plead not guilty, and when's our next listing, instead of hearing it's 6 months away, they've been told, right, we've relisted it, it's next week. So just like that, they've moved the pressure to, if you're going to plead not guilty, you'll be heard in days. And do you really want to plead not guilty? So this is almost the human stuff around some of this thinking. And it's all as a result of a backlog that generates cultures. Now, you'd have seen this, so I'm sure you appreciate it. So what I was encouraged by is good evidence being presented to both sides to help them make the right decision. If they don't, you end up with this drift of weeks and months when you could resolve a situation. It's just not in anybody's interest.
Yeah, thank you for that, Commissioner. On the Staffordshire Safer Roads Partnership, can we recognise and agree that the police data is flawed? Its accuracy is somewhat, well, it's out of date, and it remains so. And I don't see, and forgive me if I'm wrong, in your policing plan, reducing the number of deaths on our roads. I know it's clearly there, but the information from the police is it's always late to the Department of Transport. That's a fact. It's always late. And can we be assured that you are doing all you can with the police to get this data brought up to date?
Thank you. Councillor, I'm not sure there's anything in this document that is incorrect or out of date given the timing of the report. But to your wider point, and you're now representing the County Council highways and your community safety role on the SSRP, which we welcome. And at the last meeting, which Dave chaired, there was a conversation about a piece of software called Crash, and actually it's a process really about getting some of what we discussed earlier with Councillor Bates, accidents which involve injury recorded to go up to the national body. We're back on schedule now in terms of how that is recorded, the accuracy and the way it's reported up. But Councillor Screen, you heard quite correctly that 2 or 3 years ago we were not, and there was a delay in our reporting. Something, as soon as I arrived in this role 4 years ago, I was concerned about, because it meant that nationally they thought Staffordshire was doing a better job than it was. So our priority is reducing the number of accidents, hence the round-the-clock road policing team and all the interventions that they're making. It's fair to say we're still, I think, got some old records that need to be tidied up. I think some we're not going to be able to, but you might be in a position to share yourself with the panel members the progress that we've made on that in the last 12 months as a result of being on the board. I don't think we've quoted those particular numbers in this report at all, but you are correct. It was, there was a period of time where the information lagged, and engineers in the city and county raised that concern because you can't make good interventions to improve road safety if you don't know where the accidents are taking place until a year later than you might. By the way, everywhere's late in terms of it. There's a few months lag, but ours were a year behind for a while.
Councillor Screen, I'll just come in on that because it was a question that I'd got in my own mind on the Staffordshire Safer Roads Partnership. So rather than bring it back later, do you mind if I just mention it? So, with the Staffordshire Safer Road Partnership, I think it's important that obviously it's a cross-work between the organisations there. But there are a considerable number of deaths, fatalities, and Staffordshire's it's got its fair share, if I want to put it that way. Certainly the district I represent, Lichfield District, has had, and right on our borders we've now recently had one on the causeway in terms of the reservoir. So there is great community concern over it, and I think when community is concerned, how effective can we say that the Staffordshire Safer Roads Partnership is collating obviously information that's received and then dealing with it in terms of with its partners that are going to deliver it, is that expediency, because it just, in all said and purposes, it just seems to go on and on and on, and we don't necessarily see then what is the effectiveness of the Staffordshire Safer Roads Partnership.
If Dave just picks up a bit of that, and I'll come back.
Thank you very much. It's quite interesting and quite a timely intervention. One of the reasons I think we need a robust strategy, which the partnership has been without for some time, I think, it is exactly that. What are you holding yourselves to account for? What is the baseline? And Blithfield's quite an interesting situation. I was at a task and finish meeting, I suppose the word I'd use for it, with local parish councils, the local county council there just last week, and the MP actually. The speed compliance tool would tell you that there isn't an issue with speeding around that area in terms of vehicles going over the speed limit. The speed limit's a national speed limit road from Rugeley all the way through to Utoxeter. I think that's a really good example where you could argue and look at that and say, well, that says, you know, you've got the speed limit, you're not getting a lot of people going over that. Well, is the speed limit right then? Is the question I would pose to, and did pose to the County Council Highways team there, because I'd argue it possibly isn't. I think it's where that gap exists between community perception of speeding or safety versus what we would say is the reality of the data. I think it's right that we improve that data. As I mentioned earlier, we're looking at where we've got issues where, not just in terms of killed or serious injuries, which is what the partnership would look at, but where data from other sources, whether that is highways, when they've had to replace bridges or other pieces of street furniture that have been repeatedly crashed into, whether that is parish councils and some of the community speed watch work that they do, how do we use that data a little bit better, where they've got SIDS, that sort of thing. But also where we've got challenges, and Blithfield's a good example of not just speeding, but general highway safety in terms of the behaviour of some people street racing, for example, which is what we're seeing at the causeway. They meet at the top, they go down and they race. And how we sort of divide those issues up to make sure that they are being tackled robustly. It's a partnership response required. The police can't completely enforce that. You're never going to enforce out street racing by the very nature of it. They're in cars, they're on WhatsApp. The second they see a bobby at one part of the county, they can be at another district within about 10 minutes. So it is that partnership around enforcement, greater enforcement, making sure you're getting there, making sure that where we have highways issues like Blithfield, do you build something? Is it cameras? Whatever the answer is, to make sure the partnership really zooms in on that. But all of that is dependent on a partnership that holds itself to account effectively, and that's where the strategy development is absolutely key, Chair, because we need to set a very clear baseline of what we feel as a county is acceptable, what isn't acceptable, and what we're going to do about it, and then you measure against that strategy going forwards. I think the partnership has, for too long, not had that. It's something I've been quite keen on since becoming the co-chair of it, that we do introduce something as quickly as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you on that. Commissioner?
I think Dave summed that up nicely. If you look at any metric, whether it's delivery of cameras, increasing the number of vans, improving the technology, low light, so we can go out dusk and dawn, rat runs, time, investing in the road crime team, the number of arrests, no insurance, no car tax, drink driving, drug driving. You can look at all of them, they're all on the up. In terms of here's our intention, and it sort of goes to Mr. Elliott's point as well, I think, and we can be more specific on the safer roads. What exactly it's almost target setting, and then how are we doing against the target? We've got to be careful though, because safer roads are not about speed limits, they're about the behaviour of individuals. And if we were asked a stat today about number of deaths this year, I think we were under earlier in the year. I fear in the last month there's been so many that I've read about, we're probably over where we were last year. I don't know. It's such a massive thing for everybody and their families involved in this. I am aware of a couple right on the border, a young man on a bike, a pedestrian, 30-mile-an-hour road, both hit by people doing over 70, both smacked out their heads on something. Now, with the best will in the world, that's not about speed limits, safety measures, etc. It's about a fundamental willingness to not just break the law, but you've just got no regard for your fellow humans, have you? So there's issues, and of course people do have heart attacks, people do make mistakes, and they're in control of a 2-ton piece of kit going at 50 miles an hour. So it's a difficult world, this. It's in the plan for a reason. And again, this goes to Mr. Elliott's point. If Dave and I speak to people on the doorstep, 1 in 3 will mention road safety as their primary concern. And they see somebody whipping past it over the speed limit as an abuse of the law. So it will stay in the plan for a good reason, and we'll continue to commit to it. And I'm looking forward to Councillor Screen being on the committee and contributing along with the City Council rep, because the expediency is very much, if there is an issue, and we're building a lot of houses in Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent at the moment, if there's an issue, I don't really want to wait 2 and 3 years for the stats to show there's a concern with a new junction or a design of infrastructure. We've got tools now that can tell us if it's been abused by speed, and we should pay attention to community feedback. And if it means redesigning the road or putting lights in or doing whatever we need to do, we should do it. So expediency is a cracking word, and I'm sure you'll see it all over Dave's revised strategy soon enough.
Yeah, Chair. Thank you for that, Commissioner. Yeah, the Staffordshire Safer Roads Partnership is, in my opinion, very effective. We could all do better in certain things, and there is areas for development. But the people there working in that department are doing a fantastic job, and they do some wonderful work. But the sheer number of our deaths on our roads at this moment in time, from January the 1st to, I think, the end of last week, was 22. Since the beginning of 2021, January 21, there's been 149. Far too many. And it needs looking at. And we are doing that, definitely.
Thanks, guys.
Can I carry on with the questions? Right. You mentioned, Commissioner, about the number of PCSOs, 53 in all. Yeah, that's good news. Yeah. Any news on number of PCs at all? Full-time police officers opposed to PCSOs?
Excuse me, Commissioner. That's 53 officers, police officers. In the current uplift under Neighbourhood Policing Guarantee, at the moment we've had no additional PCSOs. We've got quite a high percentage of PCSOs in Staffordshire. It's officers that we want more of. The reason I mentioned it is that government, it made a statement in the manifesto around increasing police, well, I can't quite remember how it described it. Anyway, it was a mix of officers, PCSOs and specials. It wasn't police officers, which is what the public thought they were voting for. I'm quite keen, actually, if we can, let's get them back to officers.
Okay, thank you. Just bear with me. Commissioner, can you just go on about the, ask you about your financial accountability and on your website and your finance tab. I tried to do a review of those records and I think that at the moment they're from January the 1st to June this year, which are there on the side. And I struggled to get any information out of them, basically. They weren't detailed enough as far as I was concerned. The tab number of suppliers for spend type shows an excessive number of suppliers used for identical services, for example, external training, IT software renewal, which lists 45 different suppliers. Why is there no evidence of a preferred supplier strategy? This raises concerns about procurement efficiencies and sustainability, especially with smaller IT vendors who may lack capacity to main systems and long term. Regards to police, you've got estate spending. The top 3 suppliers are linked to estates-related expenditure, refurbishment, construction and facilities management, totaling 7.3 million, which is 26% of the 6-month spend. I think this concentration demands clear justification and strategic context to understand where this money is being spent. Just saying estates, you know, and I think it'd be nice if we could see a lot more detail in the spending, you know, if possible. And in your own accounts office, there's no breakdown of operational costs, projected allocations or strategic initiatives. The absence of undermines public confidence in this oversight role, which you're meant to uphold. So it's just having that clarity and detail in the accounts being spent between yourselves. It's just public money at the end of the day, the police and the fire brigade. I mean, these are just a few examples, and there are many. I could go on and on. But could you commit to presenting future accounts, including those of the police fire service in your own office, in a clear, structured and accessible format that enables meaningful scrutiny, supports transparency and strengthens public accountability in future? That's, you want to...
Thanks, Councillor. That's a bit more of a challenge and a statement than a question. I might lift of some of it myself, because that's you're asking for efficiency and in procurement and expenditure and future thinking in exactly the same way as I would. So I don't disagree with your expectation there. This panel, you've got this to look forward to, has an almighty amount of detail when we're doing the budget review. I can't see the forward plan on the agenda, Chair, apologies, but I'm not sure when we have a interim look at finances. It's a pretty comprehensive set of papers. It's not far off what I use in governance. I'm quite keen, actually, for more information to be in the public domain than is generally shared by other commissioners for those that want to see it. If you've got any particular questions around areas of expenditure, I'm very happy to bring them back to the panel. You mentioned a couple there. Facilities management, actually that's been recently recommissioned by the police and fire service. It's a combined effort there, and we're gonna have a new provider, which I think they're taking over formally in a couple of months' time. That's a huge procurement exercise, and no doubt yourself and your colleagues, now you're overseeing the county council, will recognise that procurement in the public sector is nothing if not thorough, entirely fair, and takes into account sustainability in the way that you suggest. Sometimes that's not to the advantage of small local suppliers who might be able to provide a good service. Sometimes they can't necessarily meet the very stringent standards of the frameworks and so on. But I have no concern whatsoever about the approach and the visibility. My concern actually would be around, sometimes it means we're a little less fleet of foot than we might be in the public sector. But that's just the nature of the business. So if you have particular areas of concern around finance, it's not really a matter for today, it's on the agenda later in the year, then in advance of that, I'll happily bring you more detail on any particular area. I do appreciate Councillor Screen. It's quite tricky at the minute because there's a lot of new administrations around the country following the last local elections, and there are a lot of promises made about finding, for want of a better word, slapdash financial practice, and I know it's a bit of a struggle to find any. You ain't going to find it in my services.
Challenge. Is that a challenge, Commissioner?
Take it as you
Thank
like.
you.
And,
Yeah.
and apologies, Chair, they're not my services. That's really remiss of me. They're services I oversee. I come looking for those sorts of problems in the way that Councillor Screen does. It's not something I lose any sleep about at all. The accurate and cost-effective purchasing and process is really very, very important. I'm very happy to stand by the decisions that we make.
Mindful of time, how many more questions?
I've just got the one, but obviously there's a little bit of lead up to the question to give you some information. Commissioner, in Staffordshire we pride ourselves on being a resilient, welcoming and a cohesive community. But resilience is not built in silence. It requires transparency, consultation and trust. When the police prepare, for example, a large-scale public event such as a football match, they do so with time, intelligence and historical data. They consult, coordinate and plan meticulously to ensure public safety. Yet when large groups of illegal migrants are placed in town centres with only days' notice, our local police are forced into a reactive risk management, often without the opportunity to engage the public or prepare adequately. This lack of consultation is deeply concerning for all. Residents deserve to be informed and involved in decisions that affect their safety, their services and their community. Failure to do so undermines public trust, not just in the police, but in local authorities. We've seen the consequences in places like Tamworth, increased anxiety, resentment and the growing sense of exclusion. This is not about hostility, it's about accountability. When communities are left in the dark, misinformation spreads, rumours take root, social divisions deepen. And without open dialogue, we risk polarisation along ethnic, cultural and political lines. That is not the Staffordshire we stand for. Our police are on the front line of this challenge. They are uniquely positioned to restore trust.
Is there a question within this obviously prolonged statement? I do employ that we keep to the questions regarding the local plan and not statements. Is there a question?
This is very much in the local plan. Yes, there is a question.
Can we bring to the question?
Yeah. So community consultation is not a tick box exercise. It's a cornerstone of successful integration and social resilience. Yeah. So my question, Commissioner, which I will get to right now. Given your statutory responsibility to hold the Chief Constable to account and ensure effective policing across Staffordshire, will you initiate an urgent review of consultation protocols, particularly regarding the placement of asylum seekers, and publish clear standards for community engagement moving forward? Will you commit to measurable improvements in transparency and public involvement? and report back to this panel with a defined time frame.
Thanks, Councillor. In terms of will I request a consultation, I think you're asking specifically around the short notice given by Government and Home Office, not just this Government and Home Office, but the previous one as well, actually, around placement of, as you describe them, illegal migrants. I won't do that because it's outside my remit. It's actually outside the remit of the Chief Constable and the Police Service as well. Their duty is to maintain a safe environment and to protect the public, and in doing so they're responding to the
sorry, Commissioner, can I just break in, Chair, if you don't mind? It's in reference to consultation with the police and the lack of that public consultation from a police point of view.
I appreciate that. I've got no reason to ask that the consultation is reviewed, and also the Chief Constable, neither he nor I have got any means to influence the short notice. If you've got an example of where a consultation is really, I suppose, to the degree it could make any significant difference, has not done so, I'd be quite interested in that, because that might give me a reason to ask some questions. But whether it's... I've got concerns about the lack of time given to authorities when large numbers of people are placed. Whether that's happened in 2 or 3 parts of the county, and my own view is that shouldn't happen. There should be longer periods of consultation. I'm thinking particularly of a couple of years ago when some people were placed and some of them were poorly. They got health conditions, and the health service was not actually adequately prepared to respond. And they did a good job actually responding, but it was at the detriment of local GP practices and others. So there's a wider issue here about giving people due notice. Now, I don't believe I'm the only person in the room who would have that view. I think those authority leaders, health leaders and others would prefer more consultation. Doing something about it is beyond our control at the minute, because that's a matter for the Home Office. What I would do, however, is really be cautious about jumping then to the suggestion that people arriving in a community necessarily poses a risk without evidence. You made reference to the amount of work that goes into preparing for football matches and other public events. You omitted to mention the amount of work that goes into managing protests. And this summer that has been the most significant demand on Staffordshire Police. I think a record number of rest days have been lost. This is officers not being able to have a day off with their families through the summer because they've been asked to be ready to protect free speech and protect the freedom to protest all across the county, and in some cases assisting other places as well. So you're right, these things do take a long time in the planning, and it's done very robustly when we've got the time to do so. I don't think it would be appropriate to ask the Chief Constable to review how effectively she is managing that consultation if she's not given any significant advance notice. I hope that helps address what I think is the sense of your question.
Commissioner. Councillor Screen.
Yeah, it's all about community cohesion, isn't it? And the public not having a say in what happens in their community affects that massively. And I think that's what we need to be looking at, is that the public are informed and have a chance to speak about what happens in their community. Because the police react to the situation. Thank you.
Okay, we've given that some considerable time, and I'm mindful of the time. So, as a whole, we accept the report before us. Regards to agenda item 7, Commissioner, can I just be clear, because I'm mindful to, with the panel's permission, unless there is something that has to be dealt with straight away, whether this particular item can go to November's meeting. Because I am mindful that we're now getting to 12 o'clock. Is there, in terms of proposing that, would there be a problem?
Not from my perspective, Chair. It's a slightly different document, more technical in a way, because it's essentially the fire service's response to my plan through the formal risk management plan. A conversation at the next meeting would be really helpful, and hopefully there's enough detail there to stimulate some good questions.
So therefore, panel, I'm proposing that we do move item agenda 7 to the meeting of the 17th of November. Are we content? Nods going around. Thank you very much. So if I could then move on to item 8 of the agenda. I'm trying to get it on the page. So this is the review of the panel's policies and procedures. This is very much your procedures and so forth. What we have already done, which we said we would do, is that we've just taken an undertaking of recognising where we should bring the procedures a little bit further updated from where they are. I'm fully aware that they may require further work, but this was from a preliminary look at it that through Kate Loader and Mandy, we've tightened up a few things that we felt should be updated, and that's brought it to us. We've also, which was made reference to earlier in the meeting, in terms of the procedures to questions, where at the present moment 3 working days doesn't really allow much time for the Commissioner to prepare a response that is, is open and transparent. So I think there would be a move to change that to 15 days going forward. It's to you, I'm probably more than happy for us to give some thoughts where exactly what we wanted to bring. Sorry, Mr. Bradbury, this is for the panel members only. It's not public. I do acknowledge that you've speaking. So on the that, are there any comments to be made? Because I think probably what we will have is also a separate meeting to go through this rather than actually at the panel. So that's where I would be on that. Any comments on it? No? So we'll leave it with me, and we'll perhaps have a separate meeting to just go through where we want to be. Okay? Thank you, members. Yes, sorry, Councillor
So
Atkins.
when we come to consider this at the next meeting, could we perhaps do some research into how other panels operate? It would be quite useful to have a sort of benchmarking process, if that's possible.
That is something I would support. Madam T, if we okay?
Thank you. Within the report before you, there's a number of recommendations that have been made, and one of them that the panel may wish to give consideration to is 1.6, that the panel consider the need for an independent review of the procedures. That's proposed, one of the options for that would that it would be undertaken by Frontline, who are a national organisation who would be able to give panel that assurance and oversight in relation to procedures. In addition, the panel will note the joining of the regional networking group at 1.3, as well as the joiner of the annual conference 1.4, all of which would support the objectives of the panel, if that's the decision made by panel, to make sure that we're benchmarking ourselves against national standards and national approaches, one that I understand is supported by the chair. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to go along with that, but I wasn't even suggesting perhaps an independent investigation, but I'm assuming that sort of benchmarking information would be publicly available. But I'm happy to go along those lines. But I was thinking, when we're looking at our interim discussion, at least to have that information to see whether a further independent investigation is required.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Atkins, really helpful, but the information on review and looking what else is out there has been observed to be quite patchy, which is why bringing all of that together with the either independent expert or the panel members themselves joining those national forums may be of assistance, but one that will be considered by the panel and the chair, I'm sure. Thank you.
Mr. Bowen.
Thank you, Chair. On that topic, the individual who does our annual training, he very often refers to practices and performances of other panels, so he could be potentially another source of data for comparison.
Thank you. The Frontline, who are being proposed for the independent review, Mr Burns is with Frontline as the independent consultant. That is who delivers the training. Thank you.
Okay, I'll confer with Kate and Mandy, probably involve the Vice Chairman as well, and we'll find a date convenient for that review and just to push us forward on it. I don't know whether it would need a full independent review on it, because second, I think the primary concern there is at what cost would an independent review come, and would that fall within the Home Office budget that it gives to us? So we've got to be obviously working within those constraints. But let's, if we're okay with that then, members, let's move on then to 9, which is to receive the information report of the Chief Constable's suspension. Commissioner?
Thank you, Chairman. There's a report here. Regrettably, Chairman, it doesn't say much more than the letter I shared with yourself as Chair when I made this decision, which is really regrettable given the progress that was being made. There's nothing more I can share with the panel about the matter. It is still being investigated by the independent body. By way of reassurance, the team at the top of Staffordshire Police who have stepped up whilst Chief Constable's suspended are doing a fine job, and everybody's focused on continuing to deliver to the current plan, and particularly to prepare for the inspection report in the spring. As soon as I can share some more information, I will do. I won't wait for the next panel meeting, Chair. I'll share that with you, and you may choose to disseminate as you see fit.
Thank you, Commissioner. Obviously, this is really for an information report, and we appreciate with an ongoing investigation, there's little we can add to that. So thanks for bringing that report to us, and that's noted. Moving on to number 10, questions from the panel members. Do we have questions from the panel members? Commissioner.
Chair, just in the light of the item before last, very useful questions again, and thank you to the members for those. I wonder if some of them would have been better placed in this section rather than in direct relation to the agenda item, but that might be something on in terms of the review. And if I can be cheeky, whilst we're on the review, I now see the work programme. Apologies, I didn't find that before. It looks like we won't be looking at a budget update until November. So that, well, actually, that's not too bad a point, because that means we have 6 months' information to share the detail on.
Thanks, Commissioner. So, not got any questions from members. So, can we move then on to our work programme? We do have this afternoon at 12:30 a confirmation hearing for the financial officer, and then our next meeting is set for 17th of November. Obviously, we've just put an additional item with the fire safety plan update. So at the next meeting, we will have the MTFS reports for policing and the fire rescue service, fire and rescue annual assurance statement, and decisions made by the Commissioner. Obviously, I'll probably add on to that we've got an update with our review, but we'll monitor that as we progress with that. Members, are there anything else that, not necessarily for November, but just mindful of what we should be looking at that may not appear on that? And I would always say that please email me if there are items that you may wish to consider for that to be added at some point. I think that might be a better process rather than leaving it. I think the Commissioner's already offered that similar type thing. Get in touch rather than leaving it to the panel. Commissioner, you would like to just come in?
Chair, could I just urge you, especially given as we're going to pick up the fire CR&P next time as well, any of those questions around budget, areas of spend, where details required, if I could get those between the meetings, I'll endeavour to get something back in between as well. We can cover them off at the meeting, but if I'm only aware of them at the meeting, I can't necessarily answer them. So it'd be really handy to get that in advance.
Very good. So that concludes then the work meeting, work programme. So that in itself concludes the today's panel meeting. So at 8 minutes past 12, I formally close this part of the meeting up. And thank you very much for your attendance, and thanks to those that have viewed it online, and thanks those members of the public that's participated. Do appreciate it. Okay, so I formally close the meeting. Thank you.